This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Ames High Ethics Bowl advisor Chad Zmolek. We're going to have an amazing conversation about what is an ethics bowl, topics that students explore, and what their preparation looks like for competition. Chad Zmolek, thanks for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. We're going to talk about Ethics Bowl today.
Sounds good.
And I'm gonna go on a limb and probably assume that a lot of people have not heard of the Ethics Bowl.
Yeah, it's not a far limb you have to go out on. It's kind of a hidden little club that we run at the high school. It's we like to think of it as kind of unique, and it's a bit different where it's not promoted, say, like a debate club is, or a speech, which have kind of had more of a history.
Yeah.
So we're pretty new, so I'll give people that, maybe why they don't know about us. But so far it's we have a good group of core going through, and we're feeling pretty good about it.
So I actually just learned about it, just a couple weeks ago, invited you to come on to talk about it, and I find it to be completely fascinating. So I think over the next, 20 minutes or so, I want to talk about what it is, how it's organized, but even topics that are discussed within the Ethics Bowl and sort of how the competition unfolds.
Okay.
So let's start from the beginning, and what is the Ethics Bowl?
Well, it's an organization nationally that I believe it was set up at least it's run now through the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
And so that's where a lot of the setup and the online now, because of the pandemic, has run through. But I didn't come across it though until a professor at Iowa State, Nicholas Tanchuk, contacted, I think it was just in general, the high school.
Yeah.
Went kind of through our department. Our department liaison said, "Hey, Zmolek, I think maybe you'd be interested in this." I had run for the last 10 or so years philosophy kind of club.
Yep.
It's just a loose thing, nothing official, just for those interested. And anyway, so he knew that, and so I got in touch with Nick, and he kind of told me about it, and I'm like, sure, let's try it. And it was something new for Iowa. No school in Iowa had run it. Although I forget how many, but more schools do it than I would have imagined.
Yeah.
But it's mostly, I think, an East Coast, West Coast.
Okay.
It looked like to me. Just a few schools in the Midwest.
So we're bringing it to Iowa.
Yes, yes. Nick and Kate Paget Walsh at Iowa State both have been running it, organizing it, put in a ton of work, and we're just happy to be part of it.
Yeah.
To be kind of their guinea pig, I guess, in a way, but it's worked out well.
So Ethics Bowl, the season, when does it begin? Because I know it just ended recently in February. Mm-hmm. Ames High did really well. They had 2 teams go, and one of them got second place nationally. And so when does it begin, and how do you get students involved in it all?
So it's technically, I think it's supposed to begin in the fall.
Okay.
We lag a little bit, I think, for a number of reasons. Well, particularly last year when we first started this, we didn't know about it. And so we didn't start until, I think, January, and had to prep for February competition. And then the pandemic this year kind of pushed things off.
With everything.
So it's supposed to be kind of starting, October. Mm-hmm. And then, you have your regional and state and then regional competitions in February.
Okay.
And then the nationals would take place in kind of the March, April. And so last year when we did win our regional, we beat a team from Minnesota and a high school team, and we were supposed to go to nationals at the University of North Carolina, and that was the week before. I think then the week before is when everything shut down.
Yeah.
And so we weren't able to go. But now it would have, despite that, they're doing all of it remotely or online.
Yeah.
They now have a a system to be able to handle it.
That's great.
So all of our competitions this year were
Yeah.
remote online.
So I'm going to read off a list of topics, and I know that there were more than just these topics that our teams needed to prepare for, but I think to sort of set the stage for our listeners as far as how you prepare for this, I just want to read off a list of some of the topics that were talked about. And quite honestly, I'm just scanning them now. They're all relevant today, and they're part of like today's conversations that are happening nationally. So for example, the ethics of cancel culture, the ethics of renaming buildings, the ethics of defunding the police, the ethics of teaching sex ed in schools, and the ethics of eating out during the pandemic. So these are just examples, and you might have a couple others off the top of your head. Well, one, how are these topics, how are they generated, and then how do you prepare for this? What does the competition look like, and how do you prepare?
Yeah, it's different than, as I mentioned, like debate and speech, where usually you're given something you need to, a position, and you defend it. In Ethics Bowl, all of those topics, the students will choose which side they want to present.
Oh, okay.
And so in that it's unique. And when then you face another team, you don't know which side they're choosing.
Yeah.
So regardless, you have to figure out then how to question them and how to kind of make sure that they're systematic in their reasoning and not contradicting themselves. So yeah, the students basically get to pick which side they want to present. And there's a number of kind of sub ethical or moral questions that come in on each of those. And that's one of the difficulties too. You don't know exactly which kind of specific question they're going to ask you about the ethics of that topic. So it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And you do as best you can, obviously, while providing the kind of what we call the philosophical reasoning, that provides some foundation for your position. So yeah, you have to prepare for possibly 15 different cases. And you only have a team of 4 or 5.
Yep.
And so you then also don't know which of the 15 is going to be asked. And so you rely on maybe one person preparing, say, 4 or 5 of the cases.
Yeah.
You hope there's some overlap with somebody else. I mean, it's quite a challenge.
Yeah.
It really is. And so yeah, the kids do their best, and in some of it's you're going to try to just hopefully you have a good grounding overall, and that's where I try to, and it was more difficult this year with trying to meet and going over some of these things. So we try to get some grounding in philosophy with ethics, whether it be virtue ethics or utilitarianism. You try to kind of bring that stuff in to defend your position, or it's not maybe like debate where you would cite a bunch of stuff and to kind of support yourself. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty difficult.
So they use some of those ethics and you talked about virtue as sort of like their grounding as opposed to like citing things like in a debate. So what does that preparation look like?
Yeah, you you try to build the position that you're going to support. Like one case last year I remember that came up that the kids did a great job. It was, is it ethical to punch a Nazi? And because there was a case that actually occurred.
Yeah.
And so like you said, these are very topical. So you're trying to figure out, okay, this is how we're going to support it. These are the reasons.
Yeah.
And then, you bring in whether, you want to make it about violence, the greater good, all these different ways. And so that's where kind of that connection to philosophy comes in. But then and this is what's unique about Ethics Bowl, it's a dialectic, we call it. It's a conversation. So the opposing team isn't there to just rip you apart but they get essentially evaluated. You earn points by how well you kind of help the other team make its case. It's pretty bizarre. you're not trying to like beat them down. You don't barrage them with a bunch of questions about it. You just start trying to say, I don't think you were clear here. Could you help me understand what you meant by this?
Yeah.
Could you think of a way that maybe your position might be or have some trouble? Like, is there a situation where it would be difficult to support it? So that's where it's kind of on the fly as well. But again, back to your question is, so how do they prepare for something like that? You're just trying to figure out those scenarios where you might, and acknowledge, look, I know we might not have all the answers to this position. And then that's where the other team can come in and say, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? So, yeah, it's
so in some ways, it sounds collaborative with the other team while also trying to beat them?
Yes. It's a weird finesse move where you're trying to show the judges, you know, we think they may be a bit weak on this position, and look, we found it.
Okay.
So the judges will say, that's good.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, saying, well, nice job doing this. We think we agree with you. So you're not necessarily taking the opposite position like you would in a debate.
Right.
Yeah, it's not really the goal. The goal is just to show you reasoned, right? You thought hard about your reasoning.
Yeah.
You did it as systematically as you can. And then you also get points for, like I said, in a way helping, but in a way that's also, the competition part,
right?
Beating the other team where you are pointing out maybe where they didn't do as good a job as they should have.
So I feel like there's a little bit of, there's a little bit of a science to how you research and kind of build your case.
Sure, yeah.
But in the moment or in the competition, it's kind of a little bit of an art of language as well on how you present things. And I know you didn't say the word, like challenging the other side, because it's not that, but kind of subtly doing that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, really. And that's where the kids had to get used to it, because many of them also participate in debate.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a different way where they wanted to come at the other team with these questions and, poke the holes. And it was like, whoa, we got to show that, we're just being reasonable, we're being supportive.
Yeah.
And so that takes a little time to develop that kind of, again, what we call that dialectic or conversation.
Yeah.
And it is not totally different, but different enough where you got to practice it. Like you said, the language is different, and the judges are looking for that.
But I find this to be really great in that these are very topical, and they are topics that are right now. But there isn't a right or wrong answer in many ways to many of these things. And so I find it to be really valuable for students to engage in these types of conversations because they have to listen possibly to other viewpoints. I mean, the other team could have the same viewpoint, but in some ways it's they kind of work around in circles a little bit just to kind of where are all the pros and cons to all of these topics.
Yeah, it becomes more, again, a conversation of, playing with the ideas. But you're right, it's great for students because, our current political climate
it'd be great for adults too.
Shows, man, wouldn't it be nice instead of attacks, you could have civic engagement through conversations where there isn't a right answer, but you can develop at least positions that have good grounding in ethical and philosophical reasoning. And why can't that be good enough? And then it opens up room where it even allows students within the competition to say, oh, yeah, that's a really good point. We should kind of think of how that might fit into our position. And so it allows for people to, think again. Now, of course, you want to show that you have thought very rigorously through this to begin with. So you should be ready to counter anything and to say, well, despite that, and again, it just shows kids there's not just a one right answer to these things. It's very open.
I'm just getting a sense, and I haven't witnessed a competition, but just based on this conversation, it feels like a very genuine interest to understand a topic completely, especially a topic that, like I said before, is not just cut and dry as far as right and wrong. I'm correct because I believe this, and you're wrong because you don't agree with me. It's a very genuine way to understand a topic that I wish just applied in a lot of other settings and situations.
Yeah, because it really gets you, even from an outside observer, all of these topics, you very quickly realize how fast people make judgments.
Yeah.
Where these kids are spending months on just a few topics, granted it's still a lot, and you really start to see all the nuance and the possibility of different perspectives, and you go, how could there be one right answer on this?
Right, yeah.
And so, one of them I remember was, can you force someone to have chemotherapy? And because the person was and this was a real case, was a minor, but didn't want it. And so at first the kids would come in with, well, you do, but then as you go, well, I don't know, should we change our position?
Yeah.
And so, whereas in a judgment, you would have made that, as most of us probably do.
Absolutely.
And if you're not trained in this, and then you move on and you think you know.
Yeah.
But in philosophy, you realize pretty quickly, I don't know a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is the Socratic method, the whole point. Yeah, you don't know a lot.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
To have kids go, it's okay. But we're gonna talk about it in a competitive way.
Yeah.
And that's what's really brilliant about the whole thing. And I was so glad to be a part of it. And I'm glad Iowa State was able to bring this to us. It's just remarkable.
I hope it expands. I mean, I really do. I'm glad that we're on the cutting. Well, maybe not the cutting for Iowa, the cutting edge, just because it's not here yet.
Right. It's already opened up to, I think, 3 more schools kind of joined in this year.
Yeah.
And again, there would have been more, I think, but because of the pandemic, it was just difficult. But I think, Nick and Kate will definitely have it growing again, for sure.
A little bit of an irony around how the pandemic has shut this down, yet at the same time has probably introduced all sorts of other topics that could be explored.
Yeah. I think that, probably, as you said on that list, how many of them were related to these new circumstances that, what are the ethical reasons for doing what we're doing?
Right.
Has anybody really thought about this?
Yeah.
And so to have students on the forefront of that,
it'd be fascinating.
It's really good.
Well, even as this is an education podcast and we're part of a school district, but you could even introduce the ethics of opening up schools or the ethics of
that was one of the cases.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just
and what was the other one? Last year it was, is it ethical for teachers to strike?
Okay.
Because it does come right into the education system too.
Yeah.
But then this year was, what are the positions behind putting people back 100% face to face? And so you very quickly see what the students need, what the teachers might be as being a person who could be susceptible. There wasn't they very quickly went, we need to pick a position though, so what's it going to be? It's a lot of fun to watch them wrestle with that.
Yeah.
And
what are their debates like? I mean, are they debating amongst themselves on a side or position?
So because we kind of, again, give each student about 4 to 5 cases, sometimes more if we want some overlap, they kind of just develop it on their own. But of course, in our brainstorming, then we start to try to list, what might be the best and most reasonable things we can defend or present as our position. And so, we have had switches.
I bet.
Where you go, that might be a better way.
Do they have intense, conversations amongst themselves sometimes?
I
mean, polite but intense.
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah.
What I mean?
I think the students who have been participating are kind of not naturally that way anyway, but they've certainly been conditioned enough that they seem to really enjoy kind of going at it as far as, what do you mean by that?
I bet.
How could you say that?
Yeah. I'll tell you this, though. And so in a previous position that I've been in, we kind of talked about those conversations being like here now conversations. And I really find value in having like a really right now conversation, and then know like when that conversation's done, we can go hang out and be cool. And because it's a philosophy conversation.
And you do notice that, one, in their practice, but then two, in the competition, you don't end with there's no creation of like animosity or kind of that where you just want to beat the other. There's not that kind of vibe going on.
Right.
And so you could easily see this occurring, like you were saying, in a conversation about these positions. Why couldn't you totally disagree with somebody, point all this out? Yeah. But why would I be upset that they didn't agree with me?
Right.
Because a lot of times maybe you didn't present your case as clearly as it could have.
Yeah.
And so you start to really recognize, maybe I could have done better about trying to advocate what I was trying to.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think the kids are learning a lot from that.
I've really made concerted efforts over the past, several years just to see the other side and, insert whatever topic, I really do try to see that other side, because oftentimes, we're talking about topics and we make decisions that, they have to be made, and just from a school district perspective, they have to be made, but it doesn't mean that the other side doesn't have valuable points as well.
Yes.
And I just see that happening here.
Yes. And even after the students have gone back and forth, so you present, the other team gets to ask questions, then you get to present again, and then they switch cases.
Yeah.
But at the end, the judges get 10 minutes to question you as well.
Oh, really?
And so now you're getting actual like philosophers and and political scientists and people who really know their stuff coming at you. And so, you right when you think you may know the answers, then they always find something that will get you to go, once again, I may not know everything.
Yeah.
So imagine if we had that in our everyday conversations, to see some value in what people are thinking and believing and presenting. But again, you certainly would like to be able to point out when perhaps what they're saying is contradictory or not valid for various reasons of whatever truth. But it's quite a process.
Are there any topics that high school students today, like, they really engage with? Like, I don't know, it's easy for them maybe to take a side, or they really gravitate towards that topic?
I think that at least what the organization has been able to do, the National High School Ethics Bowl, they seem to have a pulse on that.
Yeah.
Because when you look at all those topics, it tends to be what you hear high school students talking about anyway. When it comes to the pandemic, of course. Yeah. But also there's a lot dealing with, I can't remember if you named it, the renaming buildings.
Yeah. Yep.
How is that different or similar to statues? And so we think back to our history.
Okay.
And, and racism.
Yeah.
So these are all topics that you know probably some about, and kids, you'll hear them talking about it, but this group really gets to think hard about it. Yeah. And oftentimes you don't necessarily get to go at that level, or it can be difficult maybe in a classroom having enough of the time to develop those skills to do it, even though you're trying to. Yep. But when it's not consistent, it kind of still goes back to snap judgments.
Yeah.
And so we try to help others, and I think the more people that get involved in this, they'll hopefully, in a way, train and get others to do it through this practice as well. Yeah.
Well, one of them, and I'm sure it's a topic of today, I have it written here, but I didn't read it because honestly I had to Google it. I didn't know what it meant, but buying fast fashion.
Oh, yes.
So I had to do a little learning about that one.
Actually, that was a case that came up, I think that was last year, I believe. Yeah. Those, the kind of the way of consumerism, right? Yeah, and that was one our students had to actually, in the competition, do. and they did a good job on that one. Yeah, and again, I couldn't really help them on it too much other than, okay, this is what you're saying. Now, how do we connect that to some of the way to back it up with kind of what we're talking about ethically? Because, it's not just about opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're trying to say these are the reasons. So that's where the reasoning comes in.
Well, I hope that this is one of the joys of your school year, not just around Ethics Bowl, but being able to have these conversations with high school students, because they're really good at it and they're really in tune with topics.
Yes, it's been great to watch them do it and to do it so well too. And I have been using those cases to bring into my own classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are fantastic.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we be talking about these? And to expose students to the rigor and the thinking and on these very, very important issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think this can be just yet another example where our high school students can model for adults on how to have these types of conversations. Something happens, at some point between, high school students and then when those same topics come up as adults where they become, argumentative and politicized, and it's not a conversation anymore. Right. And it should be. It
should be. And what fun is it to just think that you know all the answers?
Yeah. Yeah, right? I mean, seriously. Well, Chad, I just want to say I feel like, and maybe it'll show up on video, but I feel like my jaw was dropped during much of this conversation because I just found all of it to be so fascinating. I personally learned a ton during this podcast. I set up, some guiding questions oftentimes, and I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So
good.
I don't want to thank you for being willing to come on and talk about it, but also, be proud of your students and what they did during this Ethics Bowl, and hopefully it continues to expand, across Iowa and the Midwest.
I do too. Thank you for having me. It was good to get it at least out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone listening to this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast, I hope you also enjoyed what you listened to or enjoyed what you watched, as we are on YouTube. And please share this podcast with others, and we will be back for another episode soon. Thanks again, Chad.
Thank you.